This episode is brought to you by ProMensal.
If I see one more person who spent their whole life as a model and has professional grey hair that someone has just worked on for 4 hours in their Instagram photo going, this is what 50 is, or this is what 45 or 60 is, it's so unfair to the rest of us. It's just absolute nonsense.
Welcome to a new series of Thriving in Menopause brought to you by Prevention Magazine. I'm Andrea Duval.
And I'm Zoe Mernier.
That's right, we're mixing it up this series, and Prevention's new editor, Zoe Mernier, is joining me, bringing her fresh take to our discussion about all things menopause. And today we've got a very special guest, the celebrated author and cartoonist, Kaz Cooke. Welcome, Kaz.
Thank you, celebrated. Oh, I should have bought a balloon, shouldn't I?
Kaz, I feel that as an author and a cartoonist, your career's charted the life phases of many of our listeners, from your work on Dolly magazine and then in books like Up the Duff in the 90s, and now your latest book is called It's the Menopause. So I'm guessing the inspiration for this new book was your own personal experience.
Yes, and I'm trying not to scream at this point. Been through menopause and in some ways still in it, of course, because perimenopause is usually when all the crazy symptoms hit you, and being in menopause is kind of the rest of your life. So these are some of the things I've learned from 3 weeks of research. But this is it, girls. This is the last book in the series of, girl stuff and Up the Duff and babies and toddlers, because I don't think I can do this again.
It will possibly resonate with some of our listeners. The line in your book where you say, I wasn't just visited by the menopause fairy, but a flying squadron of them. So tell us a little bit about your own experience of perimenopause.
Well, one of the cartoons in the book is called something like the hairy, scary perimenopause fairy, who has a hairy magic wand. Look, when it first started for me, and this is why the subtitle of the book says everything you need to know in your 40s, 50s and beyond, because I was in my 40s and having an absolute crash of self-esteem and confidence. But I thought I was going bonkers. And as with a lot of women, I think, went to the GP. I reckon I was in there for like 3.5 minutes and got a prescription for antidepressants. There's nothing wrong with being on antidepressants, and I've been on them since, and I might be on them again, for anti-anxiety or, antidepressive feelings, and they work really well for some people. But at that time, it wasn't what I needed. I needed estrogen. But then there are a lot of, I just want to make it really clear that my experience of perimenopause and menopause is that everyone's is so different that what happened to me or what I did about it is not a recommendation to other people. But so for me, all of those mental things came first, and the brain fog, and for a writer, I couldn't find words in my head. And even though I worked on my own, I felt like I was really failing at my job. And I felt like a bit of a dill when I finally did get hot flushes. But honestly, I think it was 4 or 5 years later. And as with many people, it's not just that you have one period and then it stops and you never get another one. There's so many people have crazy heavy periods, almost like having 2 at the same time. They go on for weeks. I thought that I had a vaginal infection the entire time, and I finally, doing the research for the book about menopause, worked out why that is, and it's not thrush, and it's incredibly common. And then also my skin was so dry and I was itchy all the time, and I thought I was going a bit mad because I was itchy all the time, and my hair on my neck was, when I was in bed was just driving me mad. And so I sort of kind of felt ultra sensitive, and and people have all of these symptoms that we either don't connect with menopause or we don't. So for example, sneaky wee or having frankly, who wants to call it incontinence? But having a bit of an accidental wee when you laugh or cough or whatever, that is not something that people associate with menopause, but it is, as is the skin itching.
It's
So
incredibly common. And in fact, we've got an episode coming up all about it because it's one of those things that women say to me, my boobs are so itchy, or what's with itchy ears? It's quite strange.
that's so great. I'm so glad that you're doing this podcast because, I feel like there is still a real taboo, and that one of the things I wanted to do with this book was be part of the voices of, and it ended up being nearly 9,000 women responded to my menopause survey.
So
and a selection.
Incredible.
So I'd love to talk to you about that. How did you get so many women to respond to you? 9,000, you say?
Just under 9,000, and not every one of those 8,800 and something women answered every question, but a lot of them answered like more than 30 questions. So many of them answered questions and I didn't just want statistics. I wanted people's feelings. I wanted their solutions for other people. I wanted to find out what they'd found difficult. And I think also people had some things that they'd never admitted to their friends or their husband or even their GP often, but incredible stuff about their sex life, about their home life and terrible experiences they'd had with doctors, and also lots of lovely, optimistic sharing experiences that I end the book with because God knows, we need something positive about menopause to take away.
Oh, look, that's so true. And, there's a little scene in the book that Zoe and I found hilarious, and I'd love you to read it out loud for our listeners. You set the scene by telling us there are 5 women sitting on the same bus one morning.
Okay.
And of the 5, you say...
Aisha is 43 and is having a fierce hot flush. Michelle, 47, is plagued by a weird feeling of low self-esteem and concentration problems that have affected her work. She's just come back from the GP who prescribed her antidepressants. Spoiler alert, that's me. At 52, Tani's just started a weirdly heavy period, even though she had a light one 2 weeks ago. Kim, 51, is suffering with every perimenopausal symptom known to womankind and wants to lie down on the floor. She's worried she's heading for a heart attack because of an erratic heartbeat that seems to strike most nights while she's watching TV, or is that only because that's when she's sitting still and notices it? Penny, 56, sitting perkily in the front seat, stopped having periods recently but hasn't even noticed, and she'll never have another one. At the next stop, all the other women are going to throw Penny out of the window.
Oh.
Because some women don't notice going through menopause, and Penny is actually a real friend of mine whose name is Penny.
Oh, well, good for you, Penny. 30% of women are blessed just like Penny. But then there's the other 60%. And I'd be fascinated to know you going through these 8,000 plus women's responses. Were you surprised by some of the answers, and what were some of the things?
Was so emotional. I really did cry reading some of them because I think a lot of women found that menopausal symptoms, even before they knew they were menopausal, or even sometimes looking back and they never knew when they were going through it, it affected their relationships with their kids, with their partners, and it was really difficult for them at work. Some of the responses really made me laugh. I know. I want to read you because I just want to read you. One of the first ones I read was from Cassandra, 50, who replied to the question about whether she'd had any menopause symptoms. She wrote, "I have none of these things. Good God, what is the matter with people? This isn't a goddamn illness. It's just what is happening now." And clearly no rage or irritability there. And then in answer to another question, do you have a motto or philosophy on menopause? She wrote, "Burn it all down."
Cassandra.
There's quotes in the book, and some of the stories that I found so sad were people trying to get doctors to help them or understand them or even sympathise with them. Other people had fantastic experiences with doctors. But out of that came a list in the book of what to ask your doctor. And one of the other hints is if when you first book to talk about menopause, book a long GP session and have these questions ready.
I thought it was interesting too when you delved into the medical history of menopause. What were some of the surprising afflictions and inflictions that society imposed on poor old women for getting to what every woman is going to go through that's lucky enough to get to midlife?
A lot of it is what they thought witchcraft was. So getting a hairier face and women who were mixing up herbal tinctures to try and help their symptoms. So that's pretty wild. You could get burnt at the stake or chucked in the local pond. But they didn't even know what hormones were till the 1930s, right? So that's less than 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So we've had so much catching up to do with but I will say, having spoken to a lot of experts and a lot of doctors and specialists in menopause, many of the men, but there are just so many women now with this as a specialty, hormones and menopause, and they are great, and they are doing research. They are really kind to their patients, and I love that. They really gave me hope, because I think the medical profession has come a really long way. But as you can tell if you've read the book, I very often I'm saying things like, "There's no research on this," and there's not enough research on that, and
well, let's hope they've come further than the medical men back in the day that said corsets caused vaginal infections and stopped periods could be cured by hot pokers or leeches on the cervix.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm glad we've come a bit further than that at least.
We have, but it's amazing, isn't it? In the same way that they used to say that women with periods were so poisonous they could walk past a tree and it would kill the fruit.
I'm sorry.
You would think that they would then go, "Oh, great, it's menopause, so you're not going to be killing all the apples now." But no, they found another way to say that it was, weird and wrong.
Oh.
I mean, menopause is natural, but that doesn't mean it's easy or that you don't need help for many people. So I think one of the things I wanted to do with the book was tease out that idea of it shouldn't be medical versus natural. It should be what's going to help you, what symptoms do you have, and what can you do or what can help you.
Absolutely. And I think it's just awareness of just how many different symptoms there are that I think a lot of them are things that people might have dismissed as other things that are happening in their lives. For example, I had kids quite late. So at the time when those symptoms would have been starting, I just, thought it was because I was exhausted because I have children. I mean, I probably was as well. But it's just knowing how many of these symptoms are all relating back to menopause.
And also knowing, not everyone can take hormonal medication. And even for those who can, hormonal medication doesn't cure, if you like, or doesn't help with every symptom of menopause, of which there are 30 to 35 plus.
Yeah. That's right.
And so, there are things like your hair going all foofy and putting on weight around the middle. And those are things that most women find that MHT, which is the new word for HRT, so menopausal hormone therapy instead of hormone replacement therapy. Yeah, so that's really interesting to me too, and that's why I think it really does have to be and that's why it's probably taken so long to get here, right?
We're so used to medication being something that we'll take a blood test for that, and to realise that, your hormone levels when you're in perimenopause can be hugely high one day and really low the next. So you take a blood test one day, it's going to say something very different to the next day. So you won't show up in a blood test.
No, and it could be different between 4 o'clock and 20 past 4.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
And that's something that women really do need to know. One of the things I do in the book with a cartoon is to tell people to think of their hormone levels during perimenopause as more like the ABC logo than off the cliff. So just picture the ABC logo going up, down, and then around and starting an infinity loop.
That's fantastic. I will never look at that logo the same way again.
The ABC logo is menopause.
Very good. We'll be right back after this.
Perimenopause can actually start in your 40s. Declining estrogen production during perimenopause brings on changes to menstrual cycles and often the onset of hot flushes, night sweats, mood swings, and sexual problems. Promensal Peri is specifically designed for perimenopausal women and can help relieve these common menopausal symptoms. Promensal Peri is available at leading pharmacies across Australia and offers a cost-effective treatment at under $1 a day. When things start to change, try Promensal Peri. Always read the label and follow the directions for use.
Okay, we're back. Kaz, I suspect you're a bit of a list writer in life, are you?
Oh, I am. I have lists of lists, which I then lose. But that's the brain fog of menopause.
Well, I haven't lost this one. You have made a terrific list of positive strategies for women. So the first thing that you suggested was to talk to friends, partners and kids who make you feel better. Pick your confidants carefully. Is this something that you've done through your own experience?
Oh, I only learn by error, Andrea. That's why I write these books and have to talk to experts and women, because I'm not a guru. A lot of this stuff everyone does by trial and error. The problem is with menopause, you're often through the perimenopause without knowing or quite realising. I think it's really good for people to share this, as we now know to do about periods for tween and teenage girls, right? Talk about it in the house. Talk about what the symptoms might be. And that's why there's a list in the book of all the symptoms on a double-page spread. And that's the only page number I've got memorised.
Right.
Find it again. So I think there are some friends who can be very negative, can be very angry that they're going through menopause, who don't want to talk about it, or who just want to be angry about it. And I think it's good to try and talk with those people, but it's a bit like, you know, that thing of if Instagram's making you depressed because of all the false, ludicrous body image and pretend life, you know, don't look at Instagram for a while. And it's the same thing, like find a team of doctors or a doctor and friends who can laugh about menopause, who can share their experiences. That's what I wanted the book to be, and that's why it's got so many quotes from women in every section. I think even those of us who haven't lived life as supermodels find it hard to go through that time when our looks change and our bodies change. That's one huge thing, don't you reckon, that people don't really understand, is that your body shape changes again in menopause. And that's almost the last thing anyone tells you. So people are berating themselves for having, and people variously call it, you know, a spare tie around the middle, or the fact that your tummy seems to be coming up under your bosoms, and your breasts change, and those are things that it's really important to share and to talk about. And I think a lot of male partners in particular don't know what to expect. There are these awful jokes made about everyone goes crazy during menopause. But I think if you said to a man, and, you know, I do want to do this publicly somewhere, but, you know, if your penis was itchy all day and sex felt like, you know, having sex with razor blades, and you couldn't remember anything, and you had your heart rate was changing and racing and then changing again, you would be terrified, and your doctor would be saying, "Oh my God, we have got to help you."
Indeed.
And all of those things that women are going through, you know. So I think sharing with other people, and if you can't, then that's what the book is for, that there are all these voices of different women in the book.
Just all those quotes dotted throughout are so great, because it is just like having a great big conversation, and I think that is, you know, that's what's so important about menopause. The bigger the conversation, the more people can see their own experiences through others, and don't feel so alone, which is something that a lot of people experience when they're going through that.
I think that's right, Zoe. I think a lot of women do feel very isolated and very alone in menopause, and they don't want to admit it. I've even heard women saying, my friends are cross at me for not dyeing my hair because we're the same age and we went to school together, and they think if I show that I've gone grey, other people will know how old they are.
Oh my God.
So there are really interesting things that I haven't thought about that have come through these these quotes and these, heartfelt, often, questions and comments. And a lot of women said, for example, when I asked them about, have you experienced any menopausal symptoms? And they'd give me an answer. And then I'd say, have you had any of these things? And listed a few. And they'd go, oh, my God, I had no idea that was part of menopause or that I could do anything about it.
And I think that's a good point, because one of the other things you've put on the list is to keep a lookout for mental and physical changes and don't blame yourself. I think it's so that double page spread you're talking about, we should probably have that all pinned on our fridge, because it's not you, it's your hormones. It's important to keep remembering.
I think that's right. I think most of us are very quick to blame ourselves. I've forgotten something. I'm irritable. I can't quite cope with the number of things I used to cope with and multitask. I've had a weird light period, but that's gone, and now I've got a really heavy one, so it can't be the same reason. It can be very easy to not understand what's happening to you. I didn't realise some of those symptoms were menopausal until I started researching the book. So I hope this is really going to give women a head start, particularly in their 40s. And there's some really interesting research being done in Australia by top women psychiatrists about what the lack of estrogen does to our brains. And for some people, just knowing that those changes might happen, that they might have a crash in self-esteem, that they will forget words for a while, but, it will probably come back. Just knowing that can be enough for some women, or going easier on themselves, or perhaps taking medication, which can be a very quick turnaround for many people and kind of save them.
So, Kaz, I've spoken to a lot of experts on the podcast who've given a lot of advice, but you've nailed something here that nobody else has, which is, because we are the sandwich generation when we're going through this. You often have growing families, we have aging parents, we're probably getting to the peak of our career at the same time. You say if you're in a multi-generational or partner household, make sure everyone else is pulling their weight. And I thought that was great. Like, you, 23-year-old son, you're doing the dishes, right? And you're making dinner tomorrow night.
Yeah, I would. I think many of us get into these habits, and our kids are staying with us longer, and that could be absolutely lovely. But no woman with grown-up children who are able-bodied and able-minded, that's not a word, but you know what I mean, should be doing their kids' laundry or cooking for their kids every night, or in other ways, driving them everywhere and managing their lives. Men have got to pull their weight. One of the reasons why women, I do joke in the book, but I suspect it's true, and no expert has put me wrong yet, Andrea and Zoe. I think estrogen stops you murdering your husband. Just that idea that you might still be doing things, it might have been easier, for example, when all your kids were at home and teenagers at secondary school, that you did all the washing or you made the food for everyone every night. It's time, and that rage that you can feel in menopause is often righteous rage. Why am I the only one looking after the older people in the family? And I'm not saying this is right for everyone, but I'm just saying a lot of women nod when I say this.
Yeah.
Idea that you're there for the younger generation, you're there for the older generation, you're trying to keep stuff together at work. I mean, how do you do that when you've got brain fog and you're physically exhausted, you're missing hours of sleep because of menopausal symptoms? I did not realise that my sleep problems had I just thought it was anxiety and, what was going on in my life. Again, in a way, it's blaming yourself, right? So
it's true. It's so true. And, when it comes to stress, we also know that our hormones are likely to exacerbate our stress and anxiety levels. So you've got some great suggestions for easing your stress. And I think the first one is fabulous. Take stock and get your finances and legal affairs in order. Because one of the things that we've talked about on this program is the number of women who then don't do that and they get to 65 and have a look, there's no superannuation. Perhaps they have divorced. There's no one there to support them. This is the time for taking stock, despite how much brain fog you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will actually make you feel better. And I know a lot of these things are easier said than done. And I do think the most important thing is having connections with girlfriends. And that's part of that optimism at the end of the book is that it does feel like you need to have some kind of community, even if it's online. It does really help to get through this.
There is a fabulous Facebook group, the Australasian Menopause Support Group, that are a really caring tribe of women. So, whilst sometimes it's just having your feelings validated by someone else that goes, yeah, that happened to me too.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this. Okay, we're back. So let's talk about you for a sec. I imagine that in the process of doing this book, it helped you a lot on your own menopause journey.
Look, it really did, but I also know that there are things that I still have to address, and I have not got exercise and fitness right yet. And I need to do, and I'm working towards those obvious things like having more time for hobbies, and like everyone, I'm so busy. And so it's not necessarily, it's not that it's helped me sort everything out. It's helped me sort some things out and know that I've still got, but again, we can't be perfect. We can't be cross at ourselves for not being perfect. And honestly, if I see one more person who spent their whole life as a model and has professional grey hair that someone has just worked on for 4 hours in their Instagram photo going, this is what 50 is, this is what 45 or 60 is, it's so unfair to the rest of us. It's just so absolute nonsense.
I agree.
And I think what it really taught me partly is I'm now fine. If people say to me, oh, you look lovely, or you look, friends, because let's face it, that's that. But if a stranger says to me, oh, something complimentary, or they say, there's an expectation that, you should try and look younger than you are. And I don't have any time for that anymore. I'm 60 now. I look 60, and that is fine, and I think that's a tough battle for all of us, because that's what I was going to say before, right? Like, even those of us who are not models, it can feel really tough to feel like your face is kind of sliding off slowly over the years. But so you have to go within yourself and find something that you love doing, whether it's your hobby, the connections that you have with other people, the people that you look after, the people who will look after you. Because you do feel that even if you've got 20 or 30 years left, or you're 2/3 of the way through your life or halfway through your life, what do you want it to be? It does kind of concentrate the mind a little bit. What do you want to be important, and So I'm not good at all of that yet, but I'm better than I was. And you know what? That's good enough for me right now, because otherwise we're just all still going, why wasn't I a perfect 30-year-old? Why wasn't I a perfect 40-year-old? Why aren't I a perfect menopausal woman? Crazy standards that, and that's what my whole career has been about, like being somebody with no information and no knowledge and no brains about something and having to go and find out about it. So, whether it was pregnancy or, being a teenage girl and now menopause. And I'm sure it will all change, but right now it's as good as I can make it, this book. So, yeah.
Well, it's pretty good.
Kaz, that's all we have time for. Thank you for joining us, Kaz. And listeners, please go out and grab a copy of Kaz's amazing book.
It's the Menopause.
It's the Menopause.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you, ladies.
Zoe, would you like to read us out?
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks for listening. Thanks, listeners, for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, please click the button and subscribe. And for more great tips about living your best life at midlife, make sure you pick up a copy of Prevention magazine. I'm Zoe Mernier, and I'll see you next time.